Morning. You guys get a rare opportunity to hear me what I sound like without coffee and with only 4 hours of sleep. So if I seem unusually jumbled, please just say so. I'll try and be more coherent. We're going to cover a couple things today. 3 things: Eye Contact, Google Gadget, and WinAmpCast. Let's do the Google Gadget first. This will be kind of a demo session. This is Google's customized homepage. If you've ever signed on to google.com/IG, you get a customized personal homepage. And on there, you can put all sorts of things. They're called gadgets. That's Google's version of a widget. So, for example, some other gadgets include things like the date and time, the weather, how to figure out your student loan payments, that sort of thing. By the way, if anyone doesn't know me, my name is Chris, and I do a podcast about financial aid, which is less boring than it sounds. But one thing I was playing with last week, just for fun, because I was confused about a different problem, was how to make one of these for my show. So I did, borrowing other people's technology and put it all together into a little package. So we're going to talk about how to build one of these. This here is, if you are familiar with it, it's feedplayer.com slim player for podcasts. So it's a little flash player that just ties into your RSS feed. So you'll need to set that up at feedplayer.com. Just copy and paste your RSS. In fact, let's see if they're running today. I want the slim player. So you would just type that in, and then below here, they give you all this really nice code that you can copy and paste. So that's what's driving the flash player here. Then we have 3 buttons here for iTunes, RSS, and promoting the website. When you give away a gadget like this to folks, they can put it on their homepage. They can also actually put this on any web page in Google's syndicated content directory. So if you have people who are very, very big fans of your show and want to do as much as possible to share the information about your show, just give them a little snippet of code they can put on their WordPress blog, put it on TypePad, Blogger, their own web page, their MySpace page, and it's a great way for them to share your show. To build one of these, it actually doesn't take nearly as much work as you would think. What you need to do is go to financiallypodcast.com/gadget, and I'll put links in the wiki for all this stuff. You'll download the actual widget kit. It would help if I had the right URL. I will fix that later. And all this really does is it's a zip file of a few items. By the way, if anyone uses a Mac, that's CyberDuck. It's a very, very nice little program. Inside here, when you download this, you'll find there's an XML file and then a bunch of JPEGs and stuff like that, and a README with the license. To configure this to make it work for your show, inside the XML file, you'll see a bunch of stuff. This is a standardized XML file, and this is the HTML powering the widget. The only things that you need to do to make this work, anything that's in all capital letters, like your podcast tagline, your name, and stuff, just substitute those values out. Your URL, even down here, here's where your RSS feed goes. Save it, upload it to your server. The easiest way to do that is just take the entire folder. Oops, that's the wrong button. Take that entire folder, podcast gadget folder, and copy it up to wherever it is that you host your show. Now, if you don't have a hosting service, if you are using just like Libsyn or something, this won't work. You need to have your own domain name, and you need to have a hosting plan, which you should have anyway, because it's a good way to promote your show's brand rather than somebody else's. Once you do that, you'll go to Google, our best friends in the world when it comes to trying to get other people to do your stuff. And they provide you a nice little upload link. You point the URL of that XML file, which is actually listed in the documentation, in here, and Google will say, okay, we'll take a look at that, and in 3 to 5 days, assuming nothing goes wrong, your gadget will be available in the Google Gadgets directory. You can then take this and give it, give the Google landing page itself to all your friends and things like that. So, for example, Google will say, hey, if you want to add this lovely gadget here to your web page, you can even change the borders, make it colorful, all of those things to customize it. And just copy and paste this little code snippet, and you can give that away to all of your users. That's the Google Gadget. Relatively straightforward to deploy. Instructions are actually in the packaging itself. To give it a try, let me know how it works, by the way. My email address is financiallypodcast@gmail.com. Let me know if you have any trouble with it. It does come with absolutely positively no tech support whatsoever, and I may even, depending on the question, laugh at you, but I'm just kidding. But no, it's relatively straightforward. Second thing, we talked about this yesterday in the marketing session. WinAmp is the most deployed MP3 player of all time, 55 million installed. Installer base. Its podcasting support is abysmal. They actually do have podcasting support in there somewhere. So you have to go about 4 menu levels down inside the little options thing. Just can't find a way around. So what I did is create a thing where it says stream with WinAmp. What this does is behind the scenes, WinAmp plays what's called playlists. They're M3U files. And all they are is, it's a plain text file of MP3s. And when you click on MP3 file, by the way, iTunes recognizes it too. All you get is a show, right? And it's always the latest episode, as long as you configure the file correctly. So to make this happen, there is a wrong window there. There's a single script that I wrote called WinAmpCast.
Very short script.
Very short script. Again, simple zip file. Pop it open. Inside here, there's one file only, the index file. There's also a manual in there in case you need it. And the only configuration option you really need is to configure your feed URL. This is what this is going to do, is take your RSS feed, and it's going to turn it into a playlist that will then be automatically generated on your website. Relatively straightforward, uses simplify. In the output, when you look at what it creates, let's see. It's just nothing more than a big pile of MP3s. And as the person listens to this in WinAmp, they'll go sequentially downwards until they reach the oldest show that is in your RSS feed. So to configure that, change the RSS feed to your feed. You can optionally change the file name if you want to, but you don't have to. Upload that folder to your web server, the WinAmpCast folder, and then when you're on your website, simply take the included lovely icon, link it to the M3U file, and now you have a way for people with WinAmp to listen to your show. I found something interesting recently, that a lot of corporations block the use of iTunes within the corporate firewall because it's just too much of a security hazard, I guess, or they just don't want people listening to lots of music at work. Oh. They don't block WinAmp. So if you have an audience that is corporate, this is a great way to kind of bypass the firewall, which I probably shouldn't be telling you. There's also a video tutorial on how to install this as well. So that's the WinAmpCast. Very straightforward. The one thing you will need to do is that PHP file, you will need to run it once a day or whenever it is that you update your feed stuff. The easiest way to do that is just to visit the page itself, that little index file, and it'll just tell you all done, and it updates the feed for you. Or you can actually if you want to, put a link like at the bottom of your blog and stuff, and when search engine spiders hit it, they will automatically run it because they don't have a choice. So that is WinAmpCast. The last thing is these little chiclets, these icons here. iTunes, WinAmp, RSS, MySpace, and Morpheus. They actually now available for free. It's Creative Commons licensed goodies. There's a download on the website, financiallypodcast.com. Download the icons back. There's a small license that goes with it, and you can have these, put them on your website, and link to them. I recommend that you actually link to your MySpace add friend page, not your profile itself, because you want people to take action. And the easiest way to take action is for when they click on it, to actually go add a friend.
So what are you linking to?
If you go to your profile as a visitor, not your login page, and you right-click the add as a friend, add friend button, that's the link you want to use there. Yeah. Morpheus is it's file sharing software. It's very popular among college students because, again, the firewall can't block it because it goes on port 80, which administrators hate. But college students love it. If you look at the URL down here, actually, I'm sorry, that's a bad choice because I redirected that. There, instead of HTTP, it's mpodcast, and then that's the URL that will get you to Amorphous listener. So it's mpodcast, and then / so on and so forth. The WinAmp thing we just talked about, iTunes, RSS feeds, relatively straightforward stuff. For the iTunes, I use the ITPC redirect that we talked about yesterday in the podcast 401 because what it does is it lets you circumvent the iTunes Music Store. Normally, when you click on an iTunes Music Store link, it will send you to that page's that podcast direct page in their directory. I don't like that, and I don't like that because it relies on the iTunes Music Store to properly download your source feed, properly cache it, properly display it, and do so in a timely manner. If your show is relatively frequent, that is a bad thing because they screw up. So does Yahoo Podcasts. Yahoo Podcasts and iTunes at one time or another have been almost a week behind in some cases. Which, if you do a show every, just whenever, and you don't really care when it comes out, that's fine. But if you're doing something that's time sensitive at all, that's not a good thing.
So Chris, can I jump in?
Yes, sir.
The other advantage of ITPC is it's one-click subscribe, because if you do with the Phobos, the music store thing, it takes you to the page, and it still depends on the person clicking on subscribe.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So what happens when you click on an ITPC?
A non-ITPC link?
No, an ITPC.
It launches iTunes. Let's see if we can find one here.
CanadaPodcast.ca.
There you go.
Is that your feed name?
No, that's the Canadian Podcast Directory.
Yeah.
And every show that's on the directory gets an IPTPC link made for them right away. Automatically. Podcasts in plural. Canada Podcasts.
Oh, Canada Podcast.
Other than that, you're right.
Somebody's squatting on a Canadian podcast.
So if you go down the right side of the directory, it's rendering screen.
And there it is. One click subscribe, you're in.
And it starts downloading the most recent show right away.
Now, let's do something really silly with that. How many people are familiar with 301 redirect?
Actually, Chris.
Yes, sir.
And if they don't have iTunes?
If they don't have iTunes, they get a page saying, now redirecting to the iTunes Music Store, and then nothing happens. Or they get a page, depending on what browser they're using, that says, you need iTunes to visit this time.
And actually, if I may, I got stung by iTunes last summer,
Mhm.
where there was something that got pushed to my feed, and it took them about 2 weeks. And when they finally figured out that there was a problem on their end, they fixed it right away, and that was amazing. But they reset my feed, and I had 500 subscribers at that point, and when they reset my feed, I had 75. The other 425 were on iTunes, gone. And you don't get those guys back, and they're gone. Because they just think either you're not producing anymore, or there's no, or you've vanished, and you can't reach them because they're not listening to your show anymore, so they're not automatically getting content saying, oh, by the way, you have to resubscribe to my show.
How did that happen? That was a result of what?
There was actually a problem with my feed burner feed, which was it was detected, but rather it happened, and by the time I figured out there was a problem, iTunes had already picked up on the problem, but it messed up their end. So I fixed up my feed burner thing within a couple of hours, but it took them 2 weeks to figure out they needed to fix something on their end, and they just wiped it out and reset it.
Now the problem with ITPC is that it does not auto-underline in text emails. HTTP does. So what we're going to do, actually this wasn't on the list, but what the heck, it's Sunday morning. If you're familiar at all with PHP, PHP allows you to redirect a URL to another URL. You can just do this as a quick bounce, but if you want to be evil about it, well, you can see what I'm doing here in this PHP file. I'm grabbing the person's IP address, where they come from, a timestamp, file date, and stuff like that, logging it all to a text file before I send them to iTunes via my feed. What this gives you the ability to do, and this is relatively straightforward 14-line script, it gives you the ability to see who's been subscribing to your show and where they've been coming from. Right? In this case, we've got a bot that's decided to come visit and cause me all sorts of fun. People from Yahoo Mail, right? You can see they got, in this case, I'm looking at it, they actually got one of the Feedlets emails. They saw that you can subscribe to my show on iTunes, clicked on the link, and became a subscriber. This is a great way, an intermediate way to see who is converting. I like Google.com, that means my widget is being used. This is good. So you know how many clicks your iTunes link is getting. You bounce people to the iTunes Music Store, and you can see, okay, if I have X, Y, Z traffic to my website, 1,200 visitors a day, I have, let's see, for that day we had 34 clicks on the iTunes link, and then I can compare and say, okay, well, I'm converting at a certain ratio. And you can do that for any kind of redirect. So if you have Morpheus thing, actually I should see how the Morpheus thing is doing, because I checked on that recently. The Morpheus button in there. Some traction, not a whole lot of traction here.
Chris, I hate to interrupt. I'm just a little confused. So if I'm going to add this PHP script to figure out where everybody's coming from, where do I?
That you would put in a folder. So, for example, financialpodcast.com/Morpheus/iTunes/WinAmp. It's an index.php file, and you just give out the URL without the index.php. So, financialpodcast.com/Morpheus, financialpodcast.com/iTunes. Put that there. What happens is it gets logged, and then it bounces the person out.
Okay.
It's fairly quick.
It's very
Yeah,
extremely.
So they probably don't
user
really
will
notice.
They won't even see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The advantage of doing it this way is that you have the ability to not only use HTTP URLs for your feeds, but also you have all this nice logging that comes with it. And you can see where people are coming from and what they think is relevant. You should see your demographics change. For example, here I can see people coming in from a show I did on February 21st and stuff, and I can see if that show's been really popular or not, based on, in terms of engaging with my audience, because they've subscribed to my show using Morpheus. So those are all the tools. That's all I had for this morning. Anyone have any questions?
Is that script on the wiki?
No, that script is not on the wiki. I will put it up later.
To get an IPPC link to show up as a hyperlink in email, you also just do it as a redirect or a snipper or something?
That's exactly what that is. It's a 301 redirect.
So when you're you give out on your podcast, financial aid podcast /subscribe.
Yep.
What it actually is, then what's happening until they?
That's exactly the same thing as the iTunes one.
Okay.
I changed the name from subscribe to iTunes because I wanted to be more clear that what you were doing was going onto a link that would send you to iTunes. Because subscribe is kind of generic. And I don't like the word subscribe. I've gotten away from it because it is, in the online world, subscribe and unsubscribe means you're dealing with spam. In the offline world, subscribe means you're paying money to get something.
Yeah, I think that's confusing to a lot of
And I don't like that. Now, in the online world, the metaphor that you see on Facebook, MySpace, and all these social networks is add. Add a friend, add me as a friend, add me as a buddy, add me as this, that, the other thing. So I'll say add my show to iTunes. And it's easier mentally on some people to say, I'm just going to add you as a friend. Okay, cool. Listen to my show.
So they go to financial aid podcast /iTunes, and that's us.
That's the ITPC redirect.
Okay.
Other questions?
Sorry, it's an aside. It's the difference between whether or not you're just going out and having a beer or you're really having a relationship with someone. So how intense is it? Yeah.
That's true. Well, in this case, you're hijacking them. You're saying let's go out for a beer, and then you're taking them out.
Yeah. Kind of like vodka.
Suddenly nobody wants to have sex anymore, they want to have friends.
Exactly. They're little friends online. By the way, that feed player is also something you can put on your MySpace page. I highly encourage you to do so. Put it and then set it to autoplay so that whenever somebody lands on your profile, they at least get to hear something that's going on.
Can I pick your brain just 1 minute for MySpace?
Sure.
Right after PodCamp Boston, I went home and I said, okay, fine, there's all these people on MySpace. Let me go ahead and set something up. And literally within the first 30 seconds of setting up the page, I was starting to get weird proposals, and sort of like, maybe this is not what I want to be doing.
Okay.
But so, other than that being a really common experience, particularly since I'm dealing with kind of the education world stuff, how do I get rid of that stuff, or I just have to play with it for a while and there's just going to be a certain amount of that that's there?
You mean,
Hey, baby,
in the comments?
Yeah, and friends, you know, I see you online.
Restrict your comments to people who, restrict your comments to moderated on your MySpace profile, so moderate all comments. Remove the ability to post HTML from comments, picture comments and things like that, so that it is less inviting for people to spam you.
Okay.
And maybe don't put your picture up on there. Maybe put a show logo of some kind, so
Yeah,
that
I do a
it's,
logo.
it's more generic.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, come on, we have you here. Let's use you a little bit. What
Hey.
else?
Let's talk about using that picture of you from last night. It's very fun.
You haven't seen the video.
I'm not sure that my ISP will allow me to execute, PHP scripts. So what do I do about that? I'm sorry.
If your ISP does not support PHP, change ISPs.
Is that Julie?
But hold on, go to Bob's page, because you have to see the backside.
No. That's as far as I'm going to go with this. That's what you get for asking to be used.
I was giving Josie a chance
Sorry.
back.
No, I'm just stretching.
That's it? That's your advice? Change ISPs?
Change ISPs. Here's if your ISP does not
My
support.
ISP is so good in other ways, though.
But if you're are you hosting your website on?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but
Change hosts. I mean,
Yeah,
a decent host that
okay.
supports PHP fully, is relatively inexpensive. I think GoDaddy's hosting plan is like $4.95 a month. ICDsoft is $60 a year. And so that's a minimal investment for good capability. And if you use GoDaddy, use promo code OYH3 and get a domain name for $6.95.
okay.
You have an affiliate going with Julian? Is that something? Tell me, can you talk a little bit about who's using these widgets? Like, are people really using them? Is it more sort of just
They are a fad.
cosmetic? Is it, yeah?
They are a fad right now. The idea of portable content and being able to add other people's content to your website is kind of a fad. I don't know what its longevity is, but a lot of people add it just because they can. So you're looking at very, very early adopter phase. I think in order for them to be useful, they have to provide a lot more value than they currently do. It's nice to have your show inside of a Flash player, inside of a widget that people can share. But honestly, you're better. Yeah, that's why the widget has the iTunes link and they're right in there, because you want people instead to be consuming your media in a way that if they navigate off page, they don't lose what they were listening to, because that's a bad experience.
On the WinAmp side, am I correct in that you said it's mostly university students that are using WinAmp, so it's behind firewall? Is that sort of
Corporate.
corporate? Because I really don't hear WinAmp raised all that much in terms of my world.
Okay.
So,
Does, sorry, this may be asked while I was in another room. Does FeedBurner support sort of an add to WinAmp or screen?
Nobody supports one-click WinAmp yet.
Okay.
Because they're looking for a way to actually, people are looking for WinAmp's podcast support, and it's not there. So the transition to make it to a stream was not a bridge they were going to cross. So that's why this script is particularly effective, because it's the only one like it. So download for free. Sir.
Did you explain what the ITPC is? I usually can't exactly.
It is a special URL handler. Like HTTP is a URL handler. It's a special one just for iTunes. It stands for iTunes Podcast.
Okay.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, thank you very much. And,
you're the best, man.
Thank you.
Right.
You're fully employable.